We'll call to order the November 21st meeting of the Conestoga Valley Board of School Directors. And I welcome everyone who's here and those joining us online. Will you please join me in the pledge of the flag? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Martin, could we please have attendance?
All board members are present tonight.
Then we have a quorum. Also in attendance are the superintendent and the administrative cabinet. This is the second meeting of the month where most official votes are taken, many of which are listed on the consent agenda, which includes those items which are routine or have been discussed at our work session last week. Details of all items, related public documents, as well as minutes of past meetings are available on the district website in the posted agenda. Our meetings observe the requirements of the school code, legislative directives, the original Act 84, the Sunshine Law, all subsequent amendments, judicial readings, and our district policies to the best of our understanding and ability. Details of all items related to public documents as well as minutes are available on the district website and posted for the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been in public education for 27 years, and in my observation, there is a definite cycle that occurs throughout the school year. Don't even get me started about the full moon, as I see teachers and administrators already nodding their head in agreement. The beginning of the school year is a high, and everyone is excited to see their friends, their colleagues, and are ready to start the new year. As the year moves on, we see a dip of energy and a rise in less than desirable behaviors as we move into November. After the holiday season, we're back on another high, starting a new year and a new semester before we start another slow slide into March, saved only by the spring break that takes us through to the summer. Being aware of this unofficial observation is the first step to overcoming negativity during these two lows. Once aware, it's time for action. We do not need problem finders, we need problem solvers. Remember back in the day, if you had a problem with someone, the school, the teacher, or the administrator, you spoke directly to them. At worst, each side was able to hear each other directly, one-on-one, regarding a specific incident. At best, the communication led to collaboration and problem solving. Unfortunately, that's not always the way it is today. Social media has impersonalized communication. That's the negative side of social media. It's taken away from the personal contact. The last time I checked, a Facebook group cannot have a child in the district. Individual parents and guardians have children in the district. Concerns are personal, and only by personally sharing those concerns at the level most influential to solving the problem, usually at the classroom or the building level, will problems and solutions come to fruition. During COVID, we had two competing Facebook factions, Stand Up CV and CV for Change, that became vocal presences on social media. They were good at publicizing their complaints in closed, non-transparent private group forums. This may have served a benefit for their members, but as a district, we need positive solutions that are good for all students, all faculty, and all staff. Maybe Facebook groups or other interest groups should open up their platform or even start a new open group, may I suggest CV, you belong here, that highlights solutions and practical ways to solve problems, that encourages volunteerism in the schools. We do have a phenomenal VIA program, one that also steps up and works to help fill open support positions, of which we have many. One that finds ways to work with teachers and building principals to solve problems before they impact children's learning. I am hopeful. Now let me restate that I'm confident that coming out of this November low, we can focus on positivity and reestablishing tried and true face-to-face communication and relationship building. As our students have already started their Thanksgiving break, and with Thanksgiving only days away, I am personally thankful for many things. Regarding CV, I am thankful for our dedicated educators who make a positive difference in the lives of our children every day. I'm thankful for our engaged parents and guardians who are the first role models for our children and who set the tone for their children's school day, even before they walk through our doors. I'm thankful for the power of positivity. In a time where public education is taking a hit by a vocal minority, the overwhelming power of the majority that supports public education and the participants within, to include the bus drivers, the building support staff, the teachers, the cafeteria staff, custodial and maintenance staff, administrators, classroom, building, and district support staff. I'm thankful for the students. They come to school every day ready to do the best they can, ready to learn, ready to grow, and ready to become whatever they want to be. I'm thankful for a district that practices my stated belief of every child, every day, without exception. With that being said, I'd like to wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday. That's all for tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Board commendations, they are long. Katerina Lingo, a CV High School junior, and Christian Nabor, a sophomore, were selected for PMEA, which is Pennsylvania Music Educators Association, District 7 course. The students qualified against singers from 7 different Pennsylvania counties. The Lancaster Lebanon League announced the 2022 Field Hockey All-Stars. To the first team are seniors Elena Colbert, Michaela Rainier, and Sophia Livingston. Junior Danae Ulrich was named an honorable mention. Seniors Caroline Culp, Ellie Hershey, Isabel Miller, plus Colbert, Rainier, and Livingston were named academic all-stars. 6 senior student athletes have signed national letters of intent to continue their athletic careers at the collegiate level. Leah Book, St. Joseph University soccer. Elena Colbert, Millersville University field hockey. Rebecca Hartranft, Millersville University volleyball. Riley Hack, Fairfield University soccer. Sophia Livingston, Kent State University field hockey, and Michaela Rainier, Frostburg State University field hockey. For the second month in a row, a Conestoga Valley student was named to the Material Handling and Logistic Work Immersion Program CTC Student of the Month. CV High School senior Xavier Allman was selected as October Student of the Month. Xavier was selected because of his grades, attendance, performance at the work-based program learning placement at the J Group, and his willingness to always get along with and support his peers. 2 girls soccer players received All-Star Lebanon League recognition. Senior midfielder Leah Booth was named to Section 1 first team. Classmate Aisha Marwaha was named an academic all-star. In addition, the team received the Section 1 Sportsmanship Award. 4 boys soccer players were recognized by the Lancaster Lebanon League. Sophomore Caden Brendeman and senior David Irwin were named to the Section 1 first team. Senior Josiah Lehman and junior Nate Schovader earned second team honors, and senior Jacob Carr was named a Section 1 academic all-star. 4 girls volleyball players were named Lancaster Lebanon League All-Stars. Senior Rebecca Hartranft and Emily Kornacki were named to the first team. Summer Getz and Madison Williams were named to the second team, and senior Camden Merrill was named an academic all-star. Girls cross-country runners Sienna Dougherty was named to a Lancaster Lebanon League All-Star. Teammate Abigail Phillips was recognized by the Lancaster League for a GPA of 3.5 or higher. On Monday, November 14th, the East Lampeter Township Board of Supervisors recognized several CV High School students for their Paint the Plows project. Last year, members of the Creative Hearts Club painted a plow for East Lampeter Township under the guidance of CV High School art teacher and club supervisor Kara Hurst. In addition, several CVVA, Conestoga Valley Virtual Academy students, painted a second plow for the township. These 2 plows will be out and about on township streets this winter. Not very often, we hope.
Amen.
Seniors Mackie Vickery and Joyce Williams and junior Adrian Bonacci, along with Kara Hurst, attended last Monday evening's meeting to be officially recognized by the Board of Supervisors. And we commend all students and staff who have made special achievements. Board comments. We're going to use this time for a moment. Most of you know we had scheduled a forum beforehand. It was sparsely but interestingly attended. And our purpose for that was not just to bring everyone up to date to the student achievement after COVID, to tie the last of that program's loose strings together, but to introduce you to the gentleman that's going to be helping us lead the search for another superintendent. We didn't want Tom to be the man behind the curtain. The people heard names but didn't know who he was, so I asked him he would stay at the board meeting and give the same introduction to those that are listening online and those that are attending this meeting. So I'm going to turn this over to Tom Templeton.
All right, Odette, thank you. Tom Templeton. I am been commissioned by the board to conduct the search for the next superintendent. And I've had the opportunity to meet with the board now on 2 different occasions to start this process. And as Odette mentioned, we had a quick focus group here earlier this evening. Just a very quick snapshot of who I am. I've been doing superintendent searches, executive searches for the last 20 years, districts all over Pennsylvania. And very excited to do this work here in Conestoga Valley. I've been researching the district extensively, and I am prepared to say that I think we will have not only a successful search procedurally and logistically, but I'm excited by the fact that we can potentially get some good candidates to apply for this position. We are going to be advertising the position throughout the rest of November and December. At which point then the January and February period is reserved for analyzing and interviewing candidates. Much more on that down the road. We are going to be putting some information on the website so that community members and internal staff can follow along just logistically in terms of where the search is, et cetera. We're going to be doing focus groups coming up here right after the holidays. And surveys as well for the community. We want to try to be as thoughtfully transparent as we can in terms of getting as much information from the community as possible, because that will help the board to make thoughtful decisions related to candidates, interview questions, goals for the district, et cetera. So a lot more to come, but that's where we are now. And I guess to the board that outside of Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day, and I'll stay away from Sundays best I can. Look at your emails with all the communication. But anything else that, any questions I can answer or anything we?
Anyone that has any questions, Mr. Templeton's email will be on the website.
Yes.
There's other information, so if there's something you feel only he can answer, if not, well, we're the board, you know where to find us. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, guys. All right, see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too, sir.
All right.
Just to back up on board comments, I did attend the LLMEA All County Orchestra
Yeah.
this weekend. Fantastic, great for kids to get together. With all the craziness in the world, I've always said it's nice to have instruments in kids' hands. Did a fantastic job, enjoyed it, and it was a good experience.
I've always been very proud of our music program, very much so.
Ms. Shepard, she did nice job.
Anything else under
I
board
attended
members?
the high school play, which was Puffs. So for anybody that was a massive Harry Potter fan like me, they would have understood everything that happened. And for anybody that isn't interested in Harry Potter, you would have been completely confused, but still entertained, like the rest of my family. But no, the kids did awesome. It was really, really cool. And a lot of parents stayed after because the whole set has to be broken down. So I was in the auditorium for the 4th day in a row. And yesterday was the breakdown, and it happened quick and efficient. And it was just really cool to see that group, the drama club. And they have something called traditions where they'll like lift each other up and say nice things about each other and stuff. It's actually really, really cool. It's a really cool little community of kids where they belong and they can act together and all that stuff. It's just really, really cool. So I was impressed.
And we have a lot of our students who actually made careers out of performance.
Yeah.
Not just the famous ones, a lot of them, a lot of them. No relation, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, right. Make that clear. Graduated with my son, but no relation. Any other board comments on district activities? If not, this is a chance for public input. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board at this point on an agenda item? If it's an agenda item, we'll accept comments now, if not, there'll be comments again later for other items, okay?
Is the middle school on the agenda?
No,
All right, then I'll wait till later, thanks.
okay, we will get back to you. Comments from CVEA? Comments from other employee groups? If not, we have in front of us a very long consent agenda. All of these items we've discussed before, or they are routine. Are there any questions or changes from the agenda, the consent agenda? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Benigno.
Aye.
Mr. Talley.
Aye.
Mrs. Capta.
Aye.
Mr. Dillman.
Aye.
Mr. Gensel.
Aye.
Mr. Hurst.
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge.
Aye.
Mrs. Crawford.
Aye. We will open the table to any reaction, debrief, interest in what went on at our very personal forum.
I just think it's important, like Tom, when he talked about the surveys and the in-person groups that are coming down the line. I think it's important that the district advertise that as much as possible, and that parents and everybody that needs to be involved, we try to spread the word. That's the time to get the voice, your voice heard about what you want to see, and what you'd like to learn about the process. But a lot of people have a lot to say, so that's the time to come out. So once you see those advertised across the community, please consider coming out and lending your voice to the search.
That was one of the reasons I had that added to the list of questions, you know. Because I think that's important for them to self-identify, and I think Tom's willing to do that. Any other reaction? I was surprised to see, in some ways, anyone on such a cold night, 2 days before Thanksgiving. They did identify a few concerns, qualities they felt we should have, and as you said, that will become a very long list. But you'll also notice, and this is one of the advantages of a focus group, once you start them talking, you know, that at first they think they have nothing to say, but once one or two starts talking, or you prod them a little, suddenly, yeah, they do have some concerns, they do have some interests. And I'm looking forward to them being able to broaden our perspective as to what it is we're looking for. PSBA policy and administrative regulation support. Dr. Z, do you want to address that?
Yes, ma'am, we're gonna be looking for an action item on this one. As we discussed, PSBA has a policy service where they will go and look at all of our policies and update them with all current mandates, laws, and regulations, and then give those to us, and then we go through them quickly, and there's some personalization in each of them, but it is not the tedious 5 every month. So it also looks at our administrative regulations, which you know, those are what we use to implement the policies. So we're asking the board for approval to engage PSBA in that service.
I think it's important to know that a lot of these policies that we've talked about lately, we have to personalize, so that doesn't go away. Because at 903, I understand it's not being changed from PSBA, that's public input, so we will have to put our own fingerprints on that. I think it's one that we need to review carefully, but it never hurts every several years to have somebody scrub the whole thing down. Do you want
Dr.
an
Z.
approval, or will there be a contract later?
We have the contract attached.
Brad,
Oh, is
Sorry.
it?
Brad has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do have one question, Dr. Z. There are 2 options, right? There's an option 1 for policy review service only, and option 2 for,
We are looking for option 2 with policy and admin reg.
okay, thanks.
And I believe when I've done this in a previous district, they usually ask us where we want to start, so we'll start with the personnel where we are now and move forward, so we won't have to start at 0s and 100s, 200s.
So we'll be approving this later?
No, we'll prove it tonight.
Oh, because this is not listed as an action. Okay, then I will accept a motion to make sure you give what version is you're making the motion for.
I move to approve option 2 as presented.
Second.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Talley?
Yes.
Mrs. Kapka?
Aye.
Mr. Dillman?
Aye.
Mr. Gensel?
Aye.
Mr. Hurst?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Ms. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mr. Benigno?
Aye.
Mrs. Croft?
Aye. Motion passes. Discussion of early audit request.
I'm bringing Dr. Kozer up. This was a follow-up to the discussion last week regarding the equity audit. And Jill, as directed, went, and we do have a request for information that we are going to present to you. This is not the final selection, but just a request for information, and Jill will quickly discuss that.
So based on the dialogue last week, and Dr. Martin had asked to start looking at this idea of an equity audit. And so as part of the comprehensive plan, as you know, conducting an equity audit was included in that comprehensive plan and as part of the board goals. And so what you see in front of you is the work of our action team, our growth and achievement action team. We're the team that's responsible for implementing those pieces of the comprehensive plan. And so we knew this was part of the plan. We knew this was part of the board goals. And so we have been pulling some ideas together, looking at resources from other districts. And so we had some pieces of this ready to go, which is why I could get it to you so quickly within the week. And so we wanted to just bring it to the board to take a look at. This is a request for information. So what we are planning to do is, it's not a full RFP, a request for proposals, which means the public website, newspaper, the RFI goes out to who we select. And so our plan was to actually send this to several of our local intermediate units because they are kind of that liaison between PDE and school districts, and they have the curriculum expertise in this area. And so our goal would be to send to several different intermediate units, obtain their feedback, their proposals. And then, as you can see on the last page, we have specific criteria that we would be reviewing throughout this process. So we wanted to get this in front of you this evening, have some discussion around any questions or areas for clarity.
Any questions about what we're looking for in an equity audit? Dr. Martin, I know this was a big issue for you, and was that your request that came this quickly?
Yes, I don't have any questions because
Okay.
I'm well aware of what it is. I guess if
Okay.
anybody else has any
And you're
questions.
satisfied with the way this one's set up?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have concerns about the equity audit? What's the timeline on this?
So we're hoping to put this out within the next couple of weeks. Our goal would be that we've identified someone for the December board meeting, January at the latest, so that we can begin the work in February of 2023. And then we have reports built in on June 15th and October 15th of next year. So it would be almost a full year process when you look at the magnitude of analyzing all of the data and then convening those focus groups and looking at our policies and procedures.
Any questions?
You said, so the intermediate unit runs the audit, so then all the data mining that happens, is that all through them, or is our staff involved in that, like, too, continually? I'm just curious about that piece.
So it depends on how they come back with the proposal. The most valuable is when it's a combination of both, right? Where the consultant is leading that data analysis and that deep dive with our own internal stakeholders. But they may prepare some of the reports ahead of time and put together the charts and the graphs and the information that make it easier for our team to really unpack and understand.
Did we identify people to receive this, or did you expect to find more than what we knew?
Which IUs
response?
we're going to send it to?
Yeah,
So right now, IU 13, IU 12, 15, Chester County IU, not sure of the number, and possibly Montgomery County IU. Those are some of the different ones who may have experience with
Are there
audits.
other organizations that do this?
There are a lot of other organizations, yes. We wanted to stay with the IU because of that really specific curriculum expertise and because they are very well versed in the Department of Education and some of the resources that have been made available to us through PDE.
Okay.
Quick question, does this come with any kind of advice or anything as into how then correct some of these things, or is this just strictly information for us to
Great question. The
Do
best.
all the, figure out what we need
Yes.
to do with it.
Great question. The best thing about an audit is it's a completely outside agency who is helping to take a look at the system. And so part of the report will be the highest priority areas for improvement and how to go
And how
about,
to do
what
it.
steps
Okay.
to go about. Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We look forward to
Thank you.
that in
Thanks,
the next
Joe.
2 months.
Thank you, Joe.
Our next is return to policy 123, interscholastic athletics. I would remind the board that we have the same choices we had before. We've had some minor discussions, we've had a legal update. And again, we can continue to gathering information beyond just the legal that we've gotten, legislative that we've gotten. We could wait and see and just pass on any current action. We could review and approve it as it is, as usual, that's not necessary. If we don't necessarily review and approve it, it stays that way anyway. Or we could discuss changes or additional policies. So I open it to discussion. Don't everyone talk at once.
I did not want to hog the discussion since I'm the
Okay.
one that brought it up. I was hoping that
Okay.
someone else would jump in. I'm open to revise the policy. That's my recommendation. Was that 4? Is that option 4 to revise the policy?
That was for discuss any changes and or an additional policy.
So that's my recommendation.
Which,
4,
additional policy or changes in the current one?
changes in the current policy.
Changes in the current, one. You'll have to tell us which ones if we're going to discuss it.
What do you mean? The policy?
Yeah,
1, 2, 3.
excuse me?
1, 2, 3.
Now, if your choice is that we make changes to the policy we have.
Yeah.
You need to identify what those changes are, or there's nothing there to discuss.
I do have what the changes should be, but I don't know if we're there. I think we want to discuss options, correct?
Okay,
And then,
no, that's
so my
fine.
recommendation is option 4, but I'd like to know what, but I don't want to be
You would
alone.
like to move forward looking
Yes, I would like to move
at,
forward with
looking at changes in the current policy.
Correct. Before I give what the changes should be,
Okay,
I would
I'm
like to at
with
least
you.
give you my opinion on what option it should be.
Is there anyone that has a different opinion as to what we should do next?
So I feel like we have to have the conversation. If someone wants to have it, we should probably have it, regardless of
So whether or not we make changes depends on what those changes are?
precisely.
Okay,
Yes.
anyone else? Well, I guess the ball's back in your court.
That is
We will
fine.
discuss changes as long as someone gives us something to discuss.
Something to discuss. So would you like me to run with this?
However you
Or-
want, yes.
That's perfectly fine. So I went back to the root cause piece of it. We've had the legal overview. We've had a lot of discussion and a lot of review about this. And whenever we talk about fairness in sports, okay, literally, or we talk about, let's just call it transgender in sports from that perspective. When something of the district such as that happens, and nothing has happened in this district, but when something does, we always go back to what is policy. And our policy does not address it. So as a board, in all fairness and transparency, if a male soccer player wants to go play on the female team through the transgender piece of it, we could not say no. Because of our current policy.
I don't know if that's addressed quite accurately. It's not that they want to.
Or that they do,
Okay,
okay, that they feel that they should.
yes.
It's part of my
It's
nature
who they are.
that I should play on the women's team, women's
So
track team,
As
et
it is
cetera.
now, if a transgender student wants to participate according to their trans identification, we would allow it.
We would have to allow it.
We have to allow it. And what would you like this changed to?
So, I'm not recommending a full new policy such as what Hempfield did, okay? Back in 2007, we had addressed this in policy 123, in a sentence, because right now we address it with the PIAA, and the PIAA doesn't address anything. It's a one-sentence statement in the PIAA that will accept the principal's decision as to a student's gender, okay? That's what we have right now. So what I want to do is I want to put in the original language back from 2007 that says, the Conestoga Valley School District hereby limits participation on girls' interscholastic teams to female students only, and participation on boys' interscholastic teams to male students only. That's precedence because that was what was in the policy before, and I do not remember taking it out, but we had a lot of policy revisions, but that's the historical language of the policy. That's step one. Then step two is we need to identify what is a boy and what is a girl, and we have a couple different options of doing that. Option number one is that we can identify it as a biological boy and a biological girl in the sentence, in the language to bring it back. Or we can identify as a male or female based upon the birth certificate at birth. So we have a couple different options there in terms of identifying what is a boy and what is a girl.
So the one method is through the birth certificate. What's the other?
The other method is adding biological boy or biological girl to the sentence. Is one idea. Because right now we had just identified as boy and girl, and if we're having it as a gray area of what is a boy and what is a girl, you need to identify what the gender is.
Comments?
I guess for me, it's a matter of, like you said, the choice, is it biological boy, biological girl, or is it birth certificate? That's kind of where I'm stuck on what I feel. But I agree that the wording needs changed, and I agree that we should look into doing that this evening, if that's what we need to do. Not a vote, obviously, but what I would support the birth certificate part of it in the
What if
wording.
they don't have a birth certificate?
Well, you're in luck because we could do if they don't have a birth certificate, we could do nationalization documentation.
That's not always available either, if they were born out of the country, especially if they come from a third world country.
Here we go. Outside the United States of America, the original country issued birth certificate printed on specialized security paper with the raised security seal that is issued at the time of the student's birth.
Is that always available?
That's honestly, that's not, maybe not, but I'm assuming, yes, if they come to the country and they need a passport, I'm assuming they're gonna have their birth
Don't they need
certificate with
that
it.
to register to be a student?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what?
Don't they need that kind of documentation to register as a
I really
student?
didn't know. I just didn't know what happens to people that come from a third world country where they're,
Now,
no birth certificate.
here's the out for the, because we can shoot holes, the outliers from that perspective, but the last sentence would say, any waiver from this requirement must be approved by the school board. So that means if you have a student who doesn't have a birth certificate, who comes from maybe a war zone or something of that nature, if they don't have any of the documentation, then that request comes in front of the school board and we make the decision.
So if we're going to require birth certificates of everybody, right? Not just some people, you can't change the requirements to be on a team just for certain students. You would have to get birth certificates from everyone on the team.
Okay,
So everyone that participates in sports at CV would have to produce an original birth certificate.
we could go down that path if you think it's
Well, I
acceptable.
think you can't do it for some students and not others.
Well, we've done it when they register for kindergarten. You have to present a birth certificate to register for kindergarten. and as a student in the district. So we don't actually have to request birth certificates.
They already have it.
They're already on file.
Oh, is that,
So it's not-
okay.
So in the student's profile, is it identified as male, female on the student profile?
Yes.
I want to say yes, it is. So we could have it where if you want to change your student profile, fine.
Then it's-
But if you want to play a sport through a change, then you have to produce your birth certificate.
So you can change your student profile, but you can't,
You can change
Use
your,
it.
yeah, at the DMV, you can change your driver's license to reflect the gender identity of your choice. However, you can't change your age.
that's too bad.
I know. Even though I'm 55, I identify as 45, but they didn't.
And you look
I
35.
do.
Great.
She looked at me like she was gonna come out of the glass and just strangle me. But the reality is that you can change your driver's license if you see fit.
See, that's a new wrinkle. I have a problem with the fact that you can change your identity, but you can't act on that change. I don't see how that holds water.
I see sex and gender identity as two separate issues. Like, you are assigned the XXXY chromosome with your sex, your biological sex. But then gender identity is something completely different and might not match your biological sex. So that's kind of, I see it as its own little entity that may need its own focus that is separate from, like, that's how I compartment, because on all the forms you fill out as a parent, like, it's sex male, female, or gender male, female. And I think those words got, and then you add gender identity, like, just basic definitions of words got everything all muddled. So like gender identity is completely, like, it might not match your sex.
I think that's what's at the heart of a lot of this, whether or not gender identity, when they talk about if you're discriminating. Some laws, more modern laws, also include gender identity. Some of the other ones just say gender, and then the courts have to decide if that covers gender identity too. Sometimes they say yes and sometimes they say no. But I don't know if the two are actually considered as separate as you think they are. I would have to talk to an expert in that field to know. I think everybody approaches this differently, and there's no doubt the terminology has changed. Back in 2007, one of the reasons that was changed, as I remember, is because we did have some boys back then that wanted to play field hockey, just because they liked field hockey. And we changed that so that they could do that.
But
No one had a problem with it,
Yeah.
but it had nothing to do with sexual identity. It simply had to do with, I like this sport.
I don't think field hockey is identified as women's or males. Male field hockey.
Well,
Field hockey is
no.
field hockey.
Here's the thing, you have to put your mind back in the culture of the time.
You do.
Back then, if the same sport was played by two genders, you had girls basketball and boys basketball. You had girls track and boys track. Any of the ones that weren't identified, there was a common cultural understanding that football means boys football. Softball means girls football, girls softball, and baseball means boys baseball. There was just a common cultural understanding. That's why they don't identify them that way. Times change. And now, football doesn't have to mean boys football. And baseball doesn't always mean boys baseball. So the entire landscape is changing. And I don't think we can use that as a basis for a decision that what doesn't say it's just girls or boys. You're still gonna have the same argument from some people. I know Mr. Gensel had some concerns, which I'm not sure I understand, but I'd welcome to hear them again. But we can't rely on the old definition and the old perception of these sports because the world is changing too fast.
And our policy is not changing with it.
Well, what we tend not to do is pass a policy for the minority. We pass a policy for the majority, and then very carefully carve out if ever an exception is needed. This particular group of people, and I finally came across some of the numbers. The number, they took the Center for Disease Control, in cooperation with, I think ESPN it was, came up with what percentage of students play sports. What percentage of boys, what percentage of girls, slightly lower for girls. I have the numbers somewhere. And when then they applied this to the transgender people, and it came out to 0.44% of students. That's less than half of 1%. So we're talking about passing a policy to cover nationwide 154 students. High school student. Now, on the college level, that's completely different landscape. But there are estimated to be 154 students. As I applied their percentages to the numbers I had, I came up with 154 nationwide. And we're passing a policy to cover those people.
I think we're passing a policy for fairness in sports.
Yeah, my opinion is I agree with Mike, and my issue with the policy and the sports and stuff, I mean, is fairness and safety for the players and stuff. So with that being said, I agree that, and my personal opinion is you just put it in back, the old policy, and biological men's play on the men's team, biological females play on the females team. And then, like you said, in the end, you can have the sentence about exceptions, yeah, such as in like, if one wants to play a sport that that they don't have, that type of thing, we can then address it and go forward. I still think it can't just be a yes.
What do you
an
mean by
absolute.
safety?
Well, I mean, if you have wrestling out there and you have a biological male that wants to wrestle as a female, the safety factor of
That's
other
safety
girls.
protects my
I know,
weight.
for instance, field hockey, and you mentioned about field hockey, it's primarily a female sport in the United States. Other countries, it's mostly male. But I know a lot of women playing field hockey that when some met in outside school in like club teams and stuff like that, that then men were allowed to play, and then they pulled out because of the fact that how much harder they would hit the ball and stuff and get it higher and stuff like that. They're like, it's not worth losing teeth. It's not worth taking a ball to the face and stuff, being hit at twice as hard as what they were normally. Their reaction and all that kind of stuff is programmed, what a normal player hits it at. Then all of a sudden you have somebody coming in and hitting that ball twice as hard as what they're used to, and their reactions aren't up to speed on that and stuff. So it's
If you had a female that suddenly played that way.
I can hit a ball pretty darn hard.
right, and I'm not saying that any male is going to be twice as strong as a female. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying there's an obvious biological difference between men and women.
On like that.
And so when you bring it into like a contact sport or a sport that has the potential where one individual being much stronger than another one poses a safety hazard. And I'm not saying you can eliminate all safety issues and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying this is, in my opinion, an unneeded risk, safety risk, when they have a male's team that they could play on. That's my
If part of
point.
our stated purpose of this policy is that safety issue, then it would have to apply equally to the girls and the boys. So if you had a girl that played especially ferociously or strongly, you'd have to not allow her. I think Mr. Gensel had mentioned a 200-pound male wanting to play hockey.
No, I'm saying
Obviously,
it's
there's
just,
exceptions to that, but what Phil is saying is,
right,
and we see evidence of this stuff because it happened with the swimmer. You have people that are exceptional within their field. That happens all the time. That's why we have an Olympics. The exception will move on.
Yeah.
But the tradition has always been that they stay within their sport for those biological differences, which is why someone at the bottom of the barrel on the male side can go to the women's side and could potentially do well. It may not always be the case. We're always talking about slim margins across the board.
Yeah,
But at the same time, at the same token, while I feel the same way, I want, the heart of the issue for me is always going to be, I would never want trans students, any of our trans students, to feel like they don't belong at CV, to feel that they are unloved, to feel that they don't belong in the community, because that is not the case. They belong at CV. Where I have trouble separating is if my daughter, either of them, had pursued a lifelong dedication to a sport and a biological male, someone who's currently transgender comes over and their chance is taken away by that, because there's still a gray area in there. It doesn't matter how you slice it. There's a gray area in there, the way it's recognized, the way it's reported across the nation. This is not something that's set in stone. That's why we're having the conversation. There's still a split on how this stuff should be decided
so
across
it's
the
a
board.
matter of safety and appropriate competition levels.
Right, fairness.
And it also puts, I still have an issue with biological women, girls in locker rooms and a biological male in there. I can't separate that in my
Well,
head.
that's a separate issue.
And I know that there's no protection for those girls in
What we
law.
do-
Actually, it's not, it coincides.
Well, no,
Because if
I'm
a-
not saying we don't address it.
Yeah.
But whether or not you get to play on the field is different from where you change clothes. Okay, they're two separate issues that are
Not
addressed
really, because
individually.
if I'm a transgender male on the girls' soccer team, then I technically could go and change in the girls' locker room. Because
No,
I'm on the
not-
women's soccer team.
Not automatically.
Well, we don't have a policy that says that, now do we? So this is that cascade effect.
Yeah,
That I'm talking
and
about.
each item has to be.
Because some school
each
districts,
item
I know
has
one
to
school
be-
district in Vermont had to
And
deal with it.
here's my last question. What are we going to do if next month there's a legal ruling other than what our policy says?
I don't know, but I don't wanna not do something on a what if.
Right.
Like, that's,
Well, but.
what if nothing ever happens?
Oh, it has to because
But what I'm saying
the
is,
ruling is out there. It has to be ruled one way or the other, and it's going to be
right, but the way
ruled.
our it's,
Then we
it could get punted down the road for 20 years.
And then we can.
What I'm
read-
saying is, we do a policy now, and then we cross that bridge when we come to it, whatever. I don't wanna keep pushing it off based on, oh, what if?
No, it's not a what-if way in the future. The Title IX regulation is already written. The 60 days has passed for public reaction. It's gone to the legislature. Those 60 days are about up, and that will become the rule
Right, until,
within the next month. So what I'm saying is for 1 month, maybe we should just see where we stand, and then we can have a policy that we know, even if we change it, is written aligned with the law.
what I'm saying is, I think there's a bunch of court battles that are going to continue with this.
But during those court battles, the law stands as it is until it's struck down.
Or judge puts a hold on it, or whatever it may be. I don't see, I'm with Mike, I don't see the problem in adding those like 3 sentences back in our policy. I don't think that's like the hardest job in the world.
Is there some useful input from the table? We'd welcome it.
I just wanted, if I may, to say that if you're looking at birth certificate, trying to identify gender, you may wanna research that, because not every state, not every location in every state allows for birth certificate changes to happen the same way. There are some locations in the United States that allow for the gender of X without any doctor note or any surgical evidence. There are some states that allow surgical evidence only. There are some states that act only on personal attestation.
Well, then
So I
that's,
just wanted to make sure that. when
Are
we
you
talk
saying
about
someone could have a
certificate-
birth certificate that did not identify them transgender, but identified them as that indicated their newly identified gender?
They can produce a different birth certificate.
but then I think.
Okay, so they come with a birth certificate that says female. but they're really a transgender female. That means they could play.
Yes.
Let's say, let's just avoid the birth certificate
Well,
then.
we're talking about birth certificate at birth, not birth certificate at birth.
But it's
plus
been
change.
changed, it's
Right.
probably not available anymore.
What?
But that birth certificate's been nullified.
What Mike, I think, was saying is that if there is an issue with that, then you can put, if there's something that we need to, you were saying, if there's a circumstance that requires that, then like you said, then you
But
bring.
we might not know that. They provide a birth certificate, am I correct? It looks like an original birth certificate, and we don't know that that's the circumstance.
Can we make an assumption that kindergarten registration are gonna register at the sex of birth?
But not if they register in some school in some other state. Get their birth certificate changed and then come to Pennsylvania. Remember, we're talking about a total of 154 students here.
Just takes one.
That's just, that doesn't bother me, the total 150 students, that doesn't bother, we don't have a policy. That's the main thing, we don't have it. And 150 students nationwide doesn't, I don't care, what we need to do for CV, a policy for CV.
Do we have, age requirements for high school football?
Only what PIA has.
Why?
I don't know, ask PIAA.
Is that because older football players have a advantage over younger players?
I have no idea why. I can't answer that.
So we do have restrictions on people that can play. We have age restrictions.
We have grade restrictions.
We have grade restrictions. That sounds like discrimination.
Mm-hmm. But
If someone maybe is 12 but identifies as 16, should they be able to play?
Identifies as 16,
I'm just saying.
that's pretty much a cold fact. Yeah. My concern is that, I just feel like it's a solution looking for a problem that isn't really in front of us. It's never been in front of us. It probably won't be in front of us. That doesn't mean we wouldn't want to address it if it happened. I would have no problem with adding something that suggested if there's a eligibility challenge, that it went, of course, through the AD, but then to the administration, without identifying it. That way, whatever the law is at the time, we follow.
I agree with Mike.
What is the law right now? It's vague.
Well, the law within the next couple of weeks is going to be.
We've always heard that.
We've heard it, yeah.
It's going to be.
We've heard,
With all due respect.
we were talking about this 7 years ago at the National School Board Association.
What?
We were talking about this 7 years ago at the National School Board Association.
What's nationwide and what actually ends up being active is different.
Now, what I am willing to do, as a compromise, I'll give you your 2 weeks. And then we'll talk about December, and if nothing happens in that till December, then we move forward.
Do you want any other studies done at all?
No,
Okay. You want this
And-
put back
and
on the agenda in December?
we'll do December, or I'll even give you an extra 30 days, I'll even make it to January.
Whatever you want. Okay,
Okay, and then, but just make sure we're clear, that if the state or the federal government has not passed anything in Title IX, we're moving forward. Make sure those expectations are clear.
So as of now, the January agenda will have this policy discussion on it again, right?
Discussion with action.
You have to, if you're gonna change policy, you have to go through the process.
I know.
You can't just
do
make it up and pass it. You have to
We
go
have to
through
do-
a
we have to do-
procedure.
We'll do it through the working session,
Okay.
okay? And then we'll have our draft. And then we'll vote either yes or no on the next meeting,
January work session.
January work session. Now, if the federals and the state level has not done anything, then we as a board, we move forward. I'm giving you 60 days.
And we will decide.
We'll decide on how we want to do it, we can vote.
We
We're either
have
gonna vote
not
yes or we're gonna vote
polled
no.
We have not polled this board, and and I'm not sure how everyone stands, and I'm not going to ask
Well,
now.
And I will live with whatever the board decision
Oh, we
is
always live
made.
with what
We
the
always
board-
live with whatever the board decision is made.
But
But I think it's time to vote
You've
and
done that, we've all done that.
So can I just ask a question,
Of
just for,
course.
just so, I feel like, just so I understand the entire process. So let's say we would put some terminology in there. And there's a transgender student that maybe is questioning that eligibility requirement. If the policy is in place, that technically you're saying that they can't participate in the sport, what does that look like from an administrator standpoint? Like, what are the steps that you have to go through to enforce this policy?
Depending on how the board policy is written, will determine how we enforce. And if we say, there has to be an appeal process. If the district says no to an athlete, they have the right to appeal. And they will appeal the decision if they so choose. And I'm not sure about if it goes through District 3, if it goes to PLA, if it goes through the legal system. But they do have that right. Because what you're potentially passing is a board policy that excludes people from participating. Not includes, but
I understand
excludes.
that.
So you have to be very careful about that, the way it's worded. And I would say that we would definitely need legal advice before I could legally enforce.
So that, so that leads me into my next issue, which I don't disagree with the fairness piece of it. But I do have an issue with the potential of the appeal and spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars in legal fees. I have a problem with that from that perspective. So I just wanna lay that out there.
Do I understand where we are now is if we have limits, they automatically have the right to appeal them, no matter what our policy says about exceptions. They have the right to appeal.
For especially this, because you can bring in Title IX, whether or not it's been updated and approved or not,
Yeah,
the argument can still be a Title IX argument. So now you're bringing in the Office of Civil Rights, you're bringing in different ways to appeal.
There's so many more layers to this, and I do understand what you're saying and what the end goal is. But I also think that this is like a systemic thing, and we sitting on a school board can't necessarily make those decisions and have them stick. Because it's gonna go up, and I just don't see the risk analysis piece for me just isn't there. Because the amount of students that this could impact is so small, it's just not, I just don't see it big picture wise making sense.
I just want to make sure that when you say that this would apply to all transgender students, what about the transgender female that is not the 150, 200-pound athlete that's changing, that is truly has gone through transgender process, and she just wants to be part of the team, and now she plays, and she's sitting on the bench the whole time. Would she be allowed to play? She's not taking anyone's place. What about the transgender female that, or transgender male that used to swim for females and now swimming for males and is not a threat to anybody on the swim team? Or what about the person who's not transgender but is just a heck of an athlete, is gonna take someone's spot because they're just a better athlete? I mean, I think that there's a lot of nuances in this, that discussion has to occur. Because I don't want minds to be made up, I want a growth mindset here when we have that discussion in January, that it's not simply X, Y, X, it's not just chromosomes, we're dealing with children here.
we are, and what is the policy to change your sex in the school?
I'm sorry.
Is there a policy? What, you talked about policy, what, if we have a female that wants to become male, or what is the process to do that with documentation in the district?
I don't know what the process for documentation is either way.
I have no idea.
You know, we talk about it, I don't know how to, I know I sound like I'm playing devil's advocate, but to be honest, the concerns of safety and the fair competition are the two that bother me the most.
I don't
And
think-
I don't know how to balance those with the rights of the transgender students. I'm left in no man's land.
Odette, can you clarify when you say bother you the most?
I'm sorry.
When you say those two issues bother you the most, what
Those
do you
are the-
mean by bother?
Those are the issues that concern me about allowing
Okay.
transgender students in. Whether there's a safety issue, which there can be, there's no doubt, because once they're teenagers,
Right.
the hormones have already given them larger lungs, larger heart, stronger muscle, all sorts of things. It won't change necessarily just because they change gender. And the unfair competition part. As Dave said, that works both ways. How about the one that isn't any threat to competition, just wants to be part of a team?
That's where
And I worry about not serving that child. So I'm left thinking, I don't know where there is a policy that treats everybody equally.
I don't think we're saying you can't play. I think we need to have a policy, okay, we want to include you. You might want to play on this team, but you might need to play on that team, or case by case or whatever it's that. We're not saying no. I think with the safety and everything, it might be, okay, maybe you need to stick with this versus this, and I mean, it's just an option, but I'm not saying no to anybody. If they want to play a sport, they should play a sport.
But they can't play the sport they want necessarily.
Well, like football, field hockey, you might wear pants versus a skirt, cause we don't have kilts running around. But, like, it would only be an issue if it's boys soccer, girls soccer kind of thing.
But they can still play soccer,
Yeah, they can still play. That's my
so
concern.
they're
I
just
want
not,
every
playing on
child
the
to be
opposite
able to
sex.
play. But it might not be on the girls if they want to be on the girls, it might be playing on
And
the
it might
boys
not be
team
the
or.
sport they want.
No, we're not gonna say you have to play basketball if they wanna play soccer, like, they could still play their sport that they want to play, but instead of, if they wanna say, I wanna be on the girls' team, but they really should be on the boys' team,
But this only
That's what I'm
applies to
saying.
those sports that have separate teams.
right, like boys and girls soccer, it's not like soccer.
But that doesn't cover the other sports.
Well, like field hockey, it doesn't, I mean,
field hockey can be male or female.
yeah, whoever wants to play can play, there's girls who play football. Well, I mean,
So what you're saying is if we don't identify it as a girls or boys team, then it's open to both?
that's personally what I would assume. As a parent, I'd be like, okay, you're too tiny, you're not gonna play football as a parent. But that would be
Now, there's
between me
another
and my
wrinkle.
child.
If
That's
it
another-
doesn't say girls hockey, then it's already open to
Well,
girls
that's
or
where the whole-
boys.
It is already open,
Excuse me?
it is already open. Well, actually, it's open, yes, it is.
So this would only apply to those sports that are identified as single gender or that have two separate teams.
Correct.
And you're suggesting that someone would be assigned based on the safety and
Well, I think
athletic competitiveness they would add or subtract from that team?
It might be a board decision they bring, cause that's an anomaly, we're
I
not
don't
saying
think
no,
it should
but.
be a board decision.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think it
not
should be an
interested in making
administrative
this
decision. I'm not
Well-
going to get involved in individual decisions on what child can take what team. Maybe you want to do that, but I'm going to miss that meeting.
Take me off that list.
So we had, in the original policy, we had limits participation, okay?
Yeah,
On girls' interscholastic teams to female students only, okay? So it's identifying it last time as limits participation to girls, to female students only, and participation of boys interscholastic teams to male students only.
Well, see,
So
what
we
I-
did identify
What
it.
year was
No, but
that,
what I'm
what
saying,
year was
back
that policy?
2007.
15 years ago, we
What
had
I'm
that
saying,
policy?
back then, we understood that hockey was a girls' team. That's what it meant because we all shared that same cultural definition of certain sports are for girls. So I don't think we should be looking backwards, you know, but Diana brings up something interesting.
No,
You're
but,
saying
yeah,
right
she's
now, a
saying-
transgender could play on the girls' hockey team,
Well, Title IX
no
says
questions asked.
we have to have students have equal access, equal aspects to all aspects of schools, programs, and activities. It doesn't say they have to go specifically into one bucket or another.
Well, the
It just says
number-
they have to have equal access and be able to play.
That list I gave you some time ago, you know, in our policies, it uses different phrases for discrimination and equal access and gender doesn't matter, but the word transgender is not used because it wasn't in
Right.
popular parlance then. But
That's
you
what-
almost have to assume that it would also apply. But I never realized that the way it's written, or the way it was written then even, because it wasn't called girls' hockey,
It's called field hockey.
it was just called field hockey.
That's
A transgender student,
A non-transgender male student can play field hockey. I've seen it,
Here's one.
so, cause that's.
are we happy with that, folks? Or is that what we're trying, what some of us are trying to avoid? So what's the sense in having a limit on some teams, but not on others?
Unless you wanna eliminate,
Like field hockey, the transgender can play.
or a
In
male.
field hockey, you just don't have
But
the
boys
male,
soccer, girls soccer,
you just
they
don't have the
can't.
male interest to have a separate team.
What's the difference between a transgender playing on a girls, on the field hockey team from a transgender playing on the girls soccer team? It seems to me the one is,
Fairness of the sport.
we've got ourselves backed in the corner here, don't we? And
No,
Brad finds it
no.
amusing.
I think Title IX was
I don't
put in
find it
place
amusing at all.
for,
No, I understand and that's not a smile of pleasure.
I understand.
I understand. I
I think
the
Title
more we
IX was
talk-
put in place to protect women's sport, was it
My,
not?
my problem is the more we talk about
Originally,
this, the
well,
more
still is.
confused I get. Okay,
From a very high level, I think we do need to revisit the policy simply from the fact that, if I'm understanding it right now, we divert to BIAA, which then throws this responsibility at the feet of the principal. I do not think that's where the responsibility lies, and I
no, not a
do
principal,
not think that's where it should be.
a
So
superintendent perhaps.
From the very fact of that issue alone, I think the policy needs to be revisited.
I think any,
Aside from all of these other issues that we've been discussing.
I agree, I think we should specify that any challenge to eligibility on, for any reason, should go through the athletic director and the superintendent. That's the chain of command there. I don't think that's the
There's an
principle.
athletic chain of command, though,
Yeah.
that runs around the superintendent.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Well, we could do that if you prefer.
I'm just saying, no,
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, it's obvious, and I felt that way too, that putting that responsibility on a principal did not seem the appropriate place. It's if they didn't understand the organizational aspect of school districts.
And
I
it
agree.
opens us up to individual opinions that could change from principal to principal.
Yeah,
And I just think that's a misplaced responsibility.
if,
I
I'm not
agree,
gonna
we
go the
need
other
to
way
go
around
around that.
for the sake of argument, because once it seems to be, the discussion is either a yes or no. And Mark made or Brad, Phil, you made a comment earlier about, we're not basing this on what if. That's not the argument. But this whole policy discussion is based on a what if. What if we have a transgender, specifically transgender female? No one has ever talked about a transgender male playing a sport. No one has ever said that. What is the possibility? What if a transgender female who is a great athlete compared to other females That is what we're building this policy on. I'm just listening. That's all I've heard. I've not heard transgender male. I haven't heard transgender female who just wants to be part of a team that's not gonna put the fear of anybody into anything. This is all I've heard. So I just want you to be careful. Diane made a great point that if you go down a certain path and you have to listen to our legal advice too. I just wanna make sure everybody's aware of that before we move forward.
Yeah, can I, 2 comments real quick, just as far as in the what if, I think, I'm saying what if dependent on other people, like legislators and stuff. The what if for us, I think that's part of our duty is to have policies in place for the what ifs. You know, when this happens, what do we do? Well, we go back to the policy. So that's why the difference in the what ifs.
But most of our policy applies to things that we know normally happen.
Right, correct.
Okay, and then there are
But
little
I'm saying,
exceptions.
but being brought up and presented with it, I think it's irresponsible to be like, no, we're not gonna address it because it won't happen, and then it happens, and then we don't have a policy. So now that it's being brought up, then I think we need to look at it as being a thing. My other real quick question was, we have academic requirements to participate in athletics and stuff, correct? Is that a PIAA thing, like they set what the requirements are and we follow them, correct?
My question
Okay, I just
is-
wanted to make sure we didn't have our own,
No.
anything separate
No,
from
and
what
it's
they
the same
is.
for all schools,
Right.
that keeps the playing field.
And that's why I wanted to make sure we
My,
didn't have.
my other question, and I
anything
don't know if Brad knows this, if PIAA policy says it should be decided by the principal, and we do it differently, will they have an issue with us?
I can't answer that.
I will tell you that practically, a principal's not gonna make that decision on his own.
No, right,
He's gonna
I
talk to
would
the superintendent
certainly
and-
hope it would be a team
Yes.
decision. Nevertheless, it will be viewed as the principal's decision, right? Because that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And if we have someone who is not engaged with the team and feels like this is their burning issue and they're gonna make the decision that they think is right at that given time, they have the authority to do so. Again, what ifs, I get it, but nevertheless, I do not think that that's properly placing the responsibility for that decision.
I don't.
I don't want a principal deciding this, I want a principal administrating at a school building.
That's been an issue for me from the beginning too, although it seemed to be a minor one, but my concern is if someone else makes a decision and PIAA says it would be done by the principal, can that person say, well, I need this principal's opinion? And maybe the principal disagrees with the superintendent.
Or the principal refers to a policy that doesn't exist.
What happens when because we have legal backing one way or the other, legal advice. And if it comes to the superintendent and I have to make the call, and I go to the solicitor for advice, and he says, that's not a call you make, that you cannot exclude because of X, Y, or Z. I'm not even talking, just whatever the reason. That puts me in a predicament that, do I enforce a board policy that is, I'm getting contradictory legal advice? So that just, it puts the superintendent in a bad spot.
Sure.
I just wanna put that out there as well. Because that's gonna be a heck of a decision. Do I go against legal advice to support a board policy of exclusion?
And there's a whole nother can of worms that comes along with that. Again, I think we really need to think about the bigger picture and remember all the pieces, the moving parts to it.
Well, I thought we had. We've been talking about it since summer. Don't be wrong, but there's always been moving parts, and some things are gonna be unpopular or not popular, but at the end of the day, we have to do what's right. And we have to do what's fair. And we have to do what's best for our district.
For all the stakeholders, including our taxpayers.
Do we really know what our constituents want us to do?
Everyone that has talked to me was fine with the policy that I wanted to, the changes I want to make. No one's come to,
Knowing that
no
that's
one is,
what
no
you
one's here,
want.
like Manheim Township or Hempfield
No,
or
Manhattan
anything of that
Township
nature.
didn't do anything, they passed on
No,
it.
they punted.
They decided to wait and just follow
They
what
decided to
happens.
wait because the boardroom was filled and they didn't want to address it because,
Well,
I'm telling you exactly what,
I'm not trying to read someone
I'm not
else's
trying to
mind.
read what other
Well,
district does, and I don't care what other.
I think we've chewed on this long enough for the moment. We will take your advice and put it to January.
Is it the first meeting in January?
He
It'll be the
said,
first
he
meeting in
asked for the
January.
work session, and if that's his request, I will honor it.
However, because we're waiting for what Congress is going to
We're
do.
waiting to see if we get any
And-
better
And if
advice.
there is nothing better, then we will move forward. And then if it does change with the law, we will make the changes in accordance with the law. But it could take years. And right now, I see it as a risk that I think we should address.
We will all be back here in January.
So just procedurally, so I'm clear, if a proposed revision to the policy comes at the work session in January, there's the potential we need to vote on that in 1 week.
Or by the next month. It has to be written and reviewed.
Okay.
Okay, so
I would-
if we decide what we want in it, then within the next meeting or the next work session, we would review the actual policy.
I would just think that for all of us, we would want to avoid the situation where we see it for the first time
Oh,
1 week and have to take action.
You would
no,
not, no,
that is why I received some questions through my email where we're going to be making changes tonight. And I made it clear this was the discussion. So first you discuss if you're gonna do anything, then you agree with what you're going to change, and then they give us a written copy. There's nothing gonna be railroaded through this board, I promise you.
So our decision is to wait until January, and then we'll see what Congress does, and then we'll
Decide what to do.
decide what we'll do next. Is that fair?
Yeah, do or not do.
Or
either
do or
way.
not do. We can always just say, you know what, it's too hot, we're gonna pass. Or we can say, we're gonna do what we think is best and move forward like we always do.
And it
with our
seems the
policies.
more we talk about this, the more different complications come up that we're going to have to make sure we address in
Sure,
any policy change if we make them.
sure.
So
Are
can
we-
I just ask a question
Sure.
based off of what Brad asked? So with the whole timing of things, so if it does happen that changes are made, can those changes, no, pretty much know what they're gonna be, but
You mean that we make changes or the law changes?
no, that we would make changes.
Okay,
What would that look like timeline wise as far as,
probably February,
but hold on,
I'm
as far
sorry,
as running it through legal counsel?
at least February.
Okay.
Because it would have to be written, reviewed in legal counsel, then brought for first reading. So
Got
the earliest that could be would be February.
Got
And
it,
then when implemented? Would you
Or-
implement it at the next school year, athletics to start in the fall
understood.
or mid-year, mid-season?
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
Or we vote no to the changes.
Yeah, I just wanna make
Yeah.
sure.
Understand?
Yeah, I think if you try to change something mid-season, you'd really open yourself up to.
Sure.
Oh, no,
It's a
I
legal
don't, if we do
No.
change it, I think would it be till next.
Yeah.
Next season.
So we all at least agree on one
Right.
thing,
Yes.
it's for
That's
next
fine.
year.
That's fine.
Okay, well, we actually got something done here tonight. That we all agree on, no changes till next year, whatever they might be.
Alrighty.
I appreciate everybody's frankness and sincerity in this, I truly do. Finance and operations report, are there any issues you want to discuss? Curriculum and instruction report, anything in there you want to bring to our attention?
Yes,
Okay,
yelling. I would like to see some of the information in there was very grade specific in some of the buildings.
some of the what?
Some of the buildings.
No, before that, what was?
Grade specific.
Oh,
Grade, we're gonna be.
So
Okay.
I would like to see more, not just kindergarten did this, maybe something that all the students are doing as far as that curriculum piece. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
one of the things that Dave and I have talked about with this reorganization, is having a picture of K through 12 or K through 5 curriculum as it's consecutive and cumulative, that we see it as a picture. And that is something we've been working on with his organizational chart. And that list that he got out to us.
Yeah.
The next step after finding out who's responsible for which chunks of the curriculum was to then change our agenda to where we get reports based on that.
Well, that's great.
Much as we used to get SAS reports that covered the entire
Yeah.
department, now that we've reorganized it, it's been a slow process. That is where I was hoping to get back to, where the board got a chance to see the bigger picture of curriculum,
Fantastic.
okay? Keeping you happy as best we can.
Can I
You're fine.
piggyback off just the curriculum piece real quick?
Sure.
So next week is when they're doing the first stepping stones. Can we
When they're
get,
doing what?
the new math program, the stepping stone is being initiated. I've heard a lot of excitement even from teachers with that. Is it possible to get a report on how that's going? Is January too soon? I mean, December too soon for that?
December would be too soon, January.
So maybe in January, I would just love to hear
Yeah.
teachers' feedback with kids, just a
Well,
broad spectrum
wouldn't that
one.
be in the curriculum report?
Yeah, I imagine it would be, yeah, but
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure
Yeah.
it's specific to that piece. I just wanna know how Stepping Stones is
Yeah.
doing. Just
We'll
that
make- we'll
first
make a
initial.
separate attachment.
That would be
to the
great.
curriculum report.
Yeah, just specific about that one
Yeah.
because it's such a new program.
Okay, anything else? See, as soon as I mentioned last week, I don't know if you read it, you had to prove to me that you do. That's okay. Federal funds.
None.
That's a good report. IU, the IU reports are posted, there was nothing, special or unusual going on. PSBA report, I did not post it because nothing's changed. They had their conference in October and delegate assembly in November, so they had no other programs going on. If you look at your daily edition, it's the same thing, December, January, so it seems silly to make a report. I will mention one thing, you should have all gotten your, I brought a copy of it,
Insurance.
your bulletin. Oh, here it is, I tucked it underneath. This particular bulletin, excellent edition. This one.
Oh, I got that one.
I really advise you to read the articles. The other things I would advise, and this was something Dave mentioned before, and they gave me a copy of when I was up there. The social media guide, page 6 for board members, please read it. If you don't have it, I'll make a copy of page 6 and get it to you. It's a good guide for that. Other than that, it seems basically what they're doing, they're looking at privacy issues for students, and with the way technology is, I don't know how they're ever gonna nail that one down. They're talking about financial literacy. We already have a good program here. I don't think we'd have any problem. And of course, the new science and math standards are still coming up, but with the new election, I think everything's going to stop and shift gears. We'll have new heads of some of the committees.
Sure.
So, but they still won't do anything about charter schools. What can I tell you? Lancaster Academy has not met this month. CTC, anything interesting
They
happening?
didn't meet,
Excuse me?
they didn't meet in
Oh,
in
okay.
November.
Nominating team, as I explained,
Construction
no, I'm
team.
sorry, construction team, I skipped you, I'm sorry.
Fred,
Yeah,
updates,
Fred.
please.
Has he been back there hiding?
David?
All right,
You
Fred's
wanna do middle school or Smoketown, Fred?
I can do both, but
Then
I'll
which one
start,
can we do first?
Middletown, I'm sorry. Or, I'm sorry. just
Middletown?
middle
That's
school.
kinda
Yeah, Middletown,
Middletown Smoke School.
Snowmobile?
that's exactly right.
Which one?
But the middle school.
Okay.
And so this week should be a very productive week, we're hoping. At the end of 6 days or 6 or 7 days here, I'd like to be able to come back and give a report on that. But so the contractors are, there's a ton of contractors there. There's a lot of activity going on. Primarily, some of the big things are the remainder of the window installation.
The
Cafeteria,
windows are
yeah,
in
the
there.
cafeteria windows are in. The music windows, the last section is not in, but that's that's priority tomorrow morning, first thing.
It's on site?
It's on site, yes, verified that this afternoon. The other big thing that's going on is the gym, so we're trying to push that through. I'll back up a little bit to the music and the tech ed areas. Music other than the window, I think is basically down to the carpet. There are 3 door frames that are missing, but fundamentally to be able to get in there and operate in there it's to finish the carpet. That has to be installed. But the gymnasium is still now relying on the HVAC system to come in the line. They're progressing with their painting, ductwork overhead, athletic equipment starting this week. But the wood floor is the big thing, and we need HVAC in there, and that's probably a couple weeks out till that is to the point where they can use it to acclimate the wood floor and to installing the wood floor. And again, there's a lot of contractors there, and 6 days from now, there should be a huge amount of progress. Excavator, this photo here, the excavator is outside spreading stone in the area outside of the cafeteria. Line painting today, all the things that you can get out of the way.
The patio was completed outside the cafeteria though, correct?
They're stoning, yes, they
No,
were,
the concrete,
The patio was.
yes,
concrete was laid.
yes, the concrete
that-
was laid, that's correct.
Okay.
They're spreading the stone beyond that.
The plan is to have that stone area base paved, by end of this month.
Yeah, they can get paving till the end of the year, they're telling us.
Oh, there it is there, never mind.
Of course, if we get like Buffalo God, then there's a whole problem, but
Bite your tongue.
yeah.
Oh my
So that's fundamentally it. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Did you find an alternative?
That's
for
the
the-
current state of the gymnasium right
Yeah, the floor was delayed because the business went out of, they went out of business, correct, for the flooring contract, for the flooring?
Which flooring?
For the gym flooring, gym flooring.
The company.
Didn't the company that was supposed to supply the gym flooring go out of business?
Not that I'm aware of,
That
no.
was what it was.
The flooring
No.
supplier,
The flooring supplier,
the flooring supplier, the installer is still in business.
yes. Did you
Oh,
find
yeah,
new
they're very-
flooring?
Flooring supplier, I think it was back in July, we got a letter from them
Yeah.
saying, yep, sorry, but we're closing our doors
Sure.
July 31st.
Those are wrenching it.
Yeah.
Did you get new flooring?
Yes.
We able to-
Yeah, they have the wood floor,
The
Okay.
sure,
installer
yeah.
has acquired another manufacturer, they've gone through the submittal process for it and done all that, so, yeah. So we're.
And the good news is the installer is probably one of the best around.
Okay.
They're very good.
So what are you looking at for timetable for that gym?
That's, I think it's gonna be tough to get by the end of December. I don't think it's
January,
gonna.
February-ish,
January,
March?
January.
January?
Yeah.
All right. February. Probably. Maybe February. I'm okay with that, it's all right. Just do it right, please. Yeah, take your time. I know we talked about not rushing and cost poor quality, all that stuff, so. Okay, I think we'll be all right.
Smoketown,
It's so early.
just heavy in demolition right now, heavy in stripping out areas. Ceilings are throughout the entire building are being removed so that the HVAC people can get in and do their surveys, remove some of whatever ductwork has to be pulled out, whatever electrical stuff has to be pulled out. Demising walls, existing demising walls are being knocked down in the classroom sections. This is a perfect picture of that. I'd say demolition has progressed pretty well. It's all the way through A, and they're pretty well into area C. And again, the project continues to work in A, B, C, D, in that progression. Some new work has started in that primarily shoring that has to be done in order to take out some walls, in order to change existing lintels, beams, things like that. So they're setting that up, and there's some metal stud framing going on, which is by design to pack out or fur out the inside, the classroom side of the corridor walls in A and B. So some of that's moving forward, slowly, so that they don't get too far ahead that the code official will get upset, but he's aware of what work is going on.
And Fred, we talked at our meeting last week, no major surprises yet with the demo or anything that we found.
I'm assuming it's easier and faster to do it with no kids in the.
Extremely, yeah, and it's very wide open in there too,
We talked about maybe using that model moving forward.
that's the discussion, yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
As in Leola, or,
Mhm.
yes, yeah.
Thanks, Troy.
Yep.
Okay, may I move on without missing anything now?
You're fine. You're good.
Report from the nominating team. As I explained last week, we do it this way. Been done as long as I can remember, to allow ourselves to give full consideration to people interested in having an office, because back then we had 4 offices. And to have a frank discussion about who's ready and able. So, the report from Mr. Talley's group will automatically, if we accept the report, be nominated. That doesn't mean nominations are closed, but it does tighten them up. So, Mr. Talley.
Yes, thank you. So, the nominating committee consists of 3 individuals, as myself, it was Brad Tillman and Kathy Tobridge. We had a really good conversation, all the way around about the best structure for the leadership roles of president and vice president. Moving forward, especially with the new superintendent search, sometimes the president is replaced every year, the vice president is replaced every year. Sometimes it's a mix, and sometimes we keep it the same, et cetera, depending upon the situations. You may have a contract, you may have a superintendent search, something big that you want to keep that continuity. So the nominating committee is recommending that Idette Groff be nominated for president and Mark Ginsel be nominated for vice president for the next year.
It's our decision now if we want to accept, not approve, accept that report so that we can move forward from that basis next month.
I move we accept the report.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then we will start there next month. Are there any other reports? This is another time during the evening, you've been very patient. When we accept public input. And I assume we have one person from the public who would like to address us. I would just.
Two?
I also do.
Yeah, please.
Well, we'll take one at a time, okay. It's a policy of this board to recognize public comment. We're recognizing it's not a public forum, discussions with the board or a question answer session. With the suspension of this board of policy 309, we no longer ask presenters for their address. So I simply need to ask you to please state your name for the record.
Elizabeth Rickard.
Would you please stand and come closer to us so we can?
Sure. It actually was in the construction. That's what I wanted to talk about. I could have spoken earlier. So, first of all,
Wait a second, I'm not finished. Are you a district resident?
Yes.
Okay. Do you speak for yourself or for a group?
I'm with myself, and with Conestoga Valley Stands Up.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I did not realize we were going to go into that much of a construction report. That's my fault.
Can I have the
Go
spelling of
ahead.
your last name?
Rickard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So first of all, I'm sure we're all glad that the new CB Middle School is able to be open. We're glad that all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are mostly in their main building and able to learn in a more traditional setting after the complications of the last several years. But the last several months have given these students, as well as their families and their educators, more opportunities to practice being flexible. We applaud the students, faculty, and staff for their adaptability and positive attitudes. We know, obviously, that the opening of the new middle school didn't go to plan, however. The opening date kept being bumped back from January to June to August to September. In point of fact, there is still no finish date in sight. To start the school year, students were split between the original middle school and the IU building, 5 miles away and out of our CV district. This left students unable to access some classes and families in something of a tough spot regarding our already stressed transportation system. Some other challenges students and educators have reported facing, now that the building is open, are the windows covered in plywood, unable to be secured, which allow the weather to impact the temperatures in the rooms. Classrooms are missing doors, which are also unable to be secured. That's a safety concern. The lack of the elevator whose shaft is left open and dangerous, and it means that students with disabilities are unable to access certain areas. Rodent droppings in the student areas due to the ongoing field mouse infestation. Mold in areas left open to the weather. Music classes are taking place in the hallways, and ensemble rehearsals are having to take place in the senior high when the weather permits, because middle school students have to walk to the high school where the overworked teachers are being helped by students who happen to have the 5th block free. Our middle school students, our educators, our families, our community, our taxpayers deserve better. Parents and other taxpayers deserve to know why this opening was so bungled and why our tax dollars are being so mismanaged. Why has the board announced a $2.3 million budget surplus when our students' needs aren't being met? This seems like a learning opportunity. Our students and educators should learn that we value them enough to be willing to name our concerns and what we can do to fix them quickly. Additionally, this is a learning opportunity for our CV community. Let's have full disclosure about what went right and, more importantly, what went wrong and how we can avoid these problems next time. From what I understand, Abacus is also responsible for remodeling Smoketown. As a parent of a student with special needs who is assigned to Smoketown, I want assurances that Abacus and our Conestoga Valley School Board are going to be on top of avoiding delays and slow communications similar to those with the middle school project. I want assurances that when something goes off schedule, we will be informed immediately and that we will have safe and accessible backup plans. I want to be assured that my tax dollars are being wisely allocated and that our families and community at large have a school board that will hold our contractors accountable and to task. I ask that you inform our taxpaying community when we can expect the middle school project to be complete. I ask that the board do an evaluation of this project to see what went wrong and why, and to prepare a plan to make sure this kind of thing doesn't impact our students, families, and educators so negatively in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make one question about Mr. Johnson. Ken, is there a mold problem in the middle school?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tyson.
Ian Tyson. As you know, I've been here every meeting for 23 years. And in the last year, I've seen no evidence at all that there's any problem with the current 1, 2, 3 policy. There's nobody been coming to the board asking about it. You know, there's been no administrators, no athletic director. You know, there's just been no evidence. And I just worry that this is not the best use of your time and your energy and possibly my tax dollars. Seems to be you're looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist at CV right now. If, and that's a word I heard a lot tonight, if the problem comes up, that there's a situation that arises, if there's a conflict with this current policy, that is when you should address it. I encourage you strongly, as a board, to focus on education issues and not political ones.
Thank you.
Obviously, she didn't talk to you. I did not mean that as a dig.
No, you're
Anyone
fine,
else? Anyone else?
It's okay.
The board dates are there. Are there any other initiatives, concerns from the board before we move on? If not, I'm gonna wish everybody a safe and happy Thanksgiving. And I will take a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personal reasons.
So moved.
All those in favor?